I'm being me, I'm doing me, and I'm happy about it. Hi friends, welcome back. My name is Addie of Well Loved Clothing, and today we have a little something fun, a little something different. So we're doing a little chit chat, Q&A, get to know each other, or I guess get to know me, because I'm answering the questions that you sent in on my Instagram and YouTube about a month ago. So I asked these questions and then it got super hectic, and I finally have time to answer them. And sort of to answer one that nobody asked, this is a new space. Peter and I purchased a home about a month ago and have been moving in, and we're just so excited. I will give you all that information in the future whenever I do a home tour once we get it a little bit more set up. I have my computer here because there are a lot of questions that we're going to be going through, but I just wanted to get to know each other a little better. I wanted to share just what's going on in life and some questions that y'all consistently ask on my videos. I just thought it would be good to kind of push them all into one video and just have a little cozy chat. So I grabbed my green tea per usual, but we are going to go through some questions and just chat today. So let's get into it. I don't really know the best way to start this. So for the first question today, I had a lot of iterations of the same kind of question of how did I get started thrifting? How did I start Well Loved? What got me into thrifting? And so I figured it'd be fun to just kind of share like my life story because it's all so ingrained in fashion and thrifting. So I was definitely one of those little girls who loved clothing. I would wear like pink feather boas and heels and like crazy pattern dresses. And so I've always been sort of obsessed with fashion. All of my toys were fashion related. I would like crochet dresses for my Barbies. I had those tracing paper fashions that you could like trace an outfit and glue it to another little outfit thing. I had a subscription to InStyle at like age 8, which is just so funny to me because I would cut out all of the clothing and then like put it on the corkboard in my room. So definitely been obsessed with fashion forever. But as I got older, my mom started to take me thrifting because she thrifted for local theaters. She was the costume designer for a lot of local theaters, a lot of experience with sewing, which we'll get into that in a minute. But she would take me thrifting with her, and of course I just fell in love with it. Fell in love with the idea that this stuff that nobody wanted could be used again, but also the idea that all of this clothing was different and unique and really good stuff that I feel like people just weren't paying attention to. And so that sort of sparked my love for fashion. Fast forward a few years when I went to college and started to really figure out what my style was, I started to find all of these thrift bloggers that I just fell in love with, and they were so inspiring to see, yeah, thrift can be like an actual viable clothing option. And so it kind of solidified this idea that I wanted to be in thrift fashion forever and that I would probably never buy anything new. And so maybe like my junior year of college, I decided that I didn't want any new items, didn't want any new clothing, and I would only thrift whatever I wanted to buy. And so that really deepened my love for thrift. And I started thrifting like 3 to 4 times a week and only wore thrifted clothing, and had never felt more myself. Like, it was very fun to recognize that thrift was a part of my personality now a little bit. Also in college, I was sort of like the person everybody asked if they could borrow clothing, or like if I had a dress for something, whatever. I was definitely that friend who had all of the clothing and everyone would just kind of like borrow from my stash. So that sort of sparked this love of sharing the clothing that I had found and knowing that other people loved it too. And so I think that was really the beginnings of my well-loved journey, which I didn't even realize it at that point. But as it started to unfold after I graduated college, I wanted to own my own business. I worked in a couple of different businesses and just never found joy in it. And so I started to sell secondhand fashion on my Instagram, my personal Instagram. And then one of my friends had a studio that was opening up in Atlanta. And so I went and looked and immediately knew that Well Loved was about to become a real dang thing. So I started the actual business of Well Loved in that studio space. It was called the Reverie Atlanta. And it was just such a fun experience to be surrounded by so many women who were doing this creative, amazing thing. I started doing Instagram drops, and then I built a website because my college degree is in marketing and creative technologies with a focus in graphic design. So I have a lot of background for any of the computer design programs. So that's where I learned how to edit videos, how to edit pictures, any of that. And so from there, it just kind of became what it is now. I started my YouTube channel shortly thereafter and went full time maybe 6 months after starting my YouTube channel, and it's just been a joy ever since. So that's kind of the whole rundown, like a really speedy version of the story of Well Loved. I know that's not a ton of detail, but that's kind of the brief synopsis, we can jump back into questions because I had several questions that were along the lines of like, what do you do full time besides Well Loved, or my job history before Well Loved. So what I do now is Well Loved. I am a full-time business owner and entrepreneur. I sell vintage and secondhand on my website. I'm a content creator here. I create YouTube videos. I create content on my Instagram. I collaborate with brands to create content. And I do my frock box mystery style boxes too. So my schedule is very full with Well Loved. And I am very thankful that this is what I get to do as a full-time job. I count myself very blessed and very lucky that I am able to do this every day, to do something that I absolutely love and have always had a passion for. So getting a little bit into my life before YouTube, when I was in college, I worked at a bakery and I worked in the alumni office of my college building. So I had no idea what I wanted to do well, really ever. I didn't really think that fashion was like a viable career because it is a hard world to get into, and I didn't know if I wanted to do design or marketing or whatever that was. And so I got a marketing degree in college because I wanted to do something that was business related, and I knew I wanted to own my own business someday, but I thought that that was going to be a bakery. So actually when I graduated college, I started working at an Ingles bakery in Gainesville, Georgia, and it was really fun. I really enjoyed the experience, but I worked there for about 5 months. And when Peter and I got engaged and then married during that 5-month period of me working at the bakery, I decided that I wanted to get some kind of more corporate-y job. So I actually worked at a ministry called Adventures in Missions, also in Gainesville, Georgia, which was close to where we lived right after we got married. And I was the project manager of the marketing department there, and it was a wonderful experience. I worked there for about a year, but 6 months into working there, I started Well Loved. That was when I found the studio in Atlanta and when I really realized that that was something I wanted to chase in a dream that I had that I didn't realize I had. And so once I started that, my actual passion started to conflict with this like thing I was doing as a job, and so I wanted those to align a little more. And so I quit that job after about a year to go work at Starbucks half-time and do Well Loved half-time. So I was doing that until Well Loved became financially stable for my lifestyle. And so that was about 6 months of working at Starbucks. So I have been consistently doing Well Loved now for about 3 years and doing it full time for about 2 years. So I feel very blessed and very thankful to be able to do this. And that's more history, I guess, of Well Loved and of me and my job history. But I do this full time now and I love it. Continuing on the sort of moving train, I had a lot of questions about why we decided to move. So we have moved so much because we have just been figuring out what life looks like. We're both in our 20s. We have moved around because Peter was working at a summer camp in marketing, and with COVID hitting, it just started to be something that was not really what we wanted to do anymore, and also just not something that we were really capable of doing anymore. And so he was hired with the tool company to be a sales rep, and then got promoted to the corporate world, which was in Greenville. So he was tool rep in Knoxville, and then in corporate in Greenville. So for the most recent move that we just did from Greenville to Georgia about 6 months ago, that was also kind of because of a job, but mainly because of community, because Peter and I are both really passionate, driven people, and so we have to love what we do or else we are not happy. And so he is now the youth pastor at a local church, and he is running his own coffee shop here. So more details on that to come because I painted some murals for it and I'm super excited. But that is the reason that we moved back to Georgia. We wanted to be closer to family, we wanted to be closer to friends, and our passions just sort of align with what we want to do. And now I'm even closer to my community that I built in Atlanta when I started Well Loved. So since I'm talking about Peter, I had a couple of questions too that were about Peter and how we met. So we met in college. We knew each other from freshman year all the way through, but we were in the marketing department together. So he was a marketing major, I was a marketing major. We had the same classes because we went to Berry College in Rome, Georgia, which is a pretty small school. So we were in all of the same classes, had the same lunchtime, everything. And so we just built a really good friendship relationship, and then became best friends like sophomore year. And then senior year kind of realized like, oh, we might not just be friends here, we might actually really like each other. And so it sort of was just a realization that we loved each other. And so then we got engaged and married in 3 months. So our whole relationship was like 8.5 months long. So I highly recommend that. It was a great time to get married to my best friend. But yeah, I love him, he's great. And that's sort of our abridged version of our story. So So continuing on the history of me kind of train, I get a lot of questions about how I learned how to sew and if my mom taught me or if I just learned on my own. So kind of a bunch of both. So with the whole history of how Well Love started and how I got into thrifting, with my mom costuming, she also made a lot of the costumes that were in the shows. And so I would sit underneath her sewing table for hours and just watch her sew. And so she taught me like the basics of sewing and how to do smaller things. She also used to sew wedding dresses in her 20s. And so she's just a very talented seamstress. And so I feel like I got just a first-hand education from this amazing seamstress. But I learned some basics from her, and then I took a couple of sewing classes when I was little, but then I took like a 10-year break from sewing, and I did crochet and did other crafts. But I really got back into sewing in college when I wanted this one jumpsuit that I could not find anywhere, and I just sort of decided to make it. And so I bought the fabric, bought the thread, I had a sewing machine from when I was little, and just went for it, and it ended up being something so life-giving and so fun for me that I decided I didn't want to stop. So then I just continued to learn how to sew more and just watched a bunch of YouTube videos and sort of figured things out on my own. I would love to continue taking a couple more sewing classes because I'm at a point now where I feel really comfortable with how I'm sewing, and there are just certain things that I would love to learn how to do, and so I might take sewing classes in the future. So for some lighter fare kind of questions, I got one about what podcasts or shows that I watch while I sew or while I do anything creative, and I can't really think of anything. I love The Crown. I've watched it 3 times now. I'm watching it with my husband, and I also watch it when I sew. And so I just think it's so fun. I'm a big historical fiction kind of person, and so that's more historical than fiction, but it's still just an amazing show. Podcast-wise, I have been listening to Office Ladies for a while because I'm 27, and so that kind of puts me in a millennial status, and I did grow up watching The Office, so Office Ladies has been a great podcast for me. I'm just waiting for like 10 years down the road when I watch this back and be like, wow, that was really dated. But I really also love watching those like Netflix specials of like the inspiring food shows. There's one called The Chef Show that I absolutely love from the movie Chef. And that was just so good. It's so inspiring and cool. So really anytime I can watch anything that relates to people's experience and how they grew their businesses, big fan of it. And anything food related, love it. For a couple lighter questions so we don't have to keep getting into all of the history of my life. I had one person ask, how would you describe your style aesthetic or my 3 style words? So I still don't entirely know the answer to this question because I feel like it changes daily. Probably like juxtaposed, because I love, like even today, I have a really frilly kind of set on and then a blazer and sneakers with it. As far as like my style aesthetic, if you were going to put it into Pinterest, I feel like it would be like colorful, eclectic, maybe utilitarian. I don't know. I have a hard time even like Pinteresting myself a lot of times. But a few things that I think are really important to feel when I get dressed every day is that I want to feel empowered and I want to feel like I am presenting who I am that day to the world. So like if I'm not feeling too hot, I'm gonna wear sweatpants and I'm gonna be okay with that. But if I'm feeling amazing, I'm going to wear the frilliest vintage dress you've ever seen, and those two people can exist together. I'm a very multifaceted person, as is everyone else, and so I don't like to put myself necessarily in like a style box because it changes every day, but comfort is always key for me, so comfortable for sure. Another kind of smaller quick answer question that someone asked that I love is, what misconception do you think people have about you? And so I have 2 answers to this, because one, I don't care enough about what other people think of me to know if they have any misconceptions about me. Because as I was thinking about it, I was like, if someone thinks I'm trying to put anything on, why would I care what they have to think? I'm being me, I'm doing me, and I'm happy about it. So the other misconception is not so emotional, and it's basically that I think people think I'm taller than I am, because I get a lot of comments occasionally that are like, how would you style this on a short person? And I'm 5'4", like in a chunky sneaker, so I'm not as tall as people think I am, and that is a misconception that I am destroying right now. So, fun question, what is the most expensive item that you've ever thrifted? So, I have a problem that even at the thrift store, I'm like, if it's $11, I'm not gonna get it. I want things that are like $3 to $5 unless it's a really great vintage find or something I've been looking for. So all I can think of is this $20 leather jacket that I got while I was in Phoenix, Arizona last year with my family. The most expensive like secondhand clothing item, vintage piece I've ever gotten was a $60 dress from an antique store, and it's otherworldly. You can see it here, but those are really the most expensive things I've ever gotten from a thrift store or an antique store. This yellow dress is also my favorite find I've ever found. A few questions that I'm super excited about were the storefront questions. So I have a storefront. I told y'all about it in last week's thrift haul video, and I'm just so excited about this space. It's gonna be somewhere I sew, where I store stuff, where I sell any of my vintage or secondhand pieces. So more details will be coming out about that soon. But the question was basically that they'd love to hear more about the studio space. She said, how did you know when it was time to open it? And how did you budget for it / find the things to furnish it, display it, all that stuff? So I knew that it was time to open a storefront because it literally fell in my lap. It was something that I had been wanting to do for maybe like 6 months now, and we just weren't ever settled enough to do it. And I actually had a friend who used to have the space that I am now in, and she told me that she was moving out of that space like 2 weeks before she was ever going to move out. And so it felt like this perfect opportunity and just this blessing to be able to take this space. So I went and talked to the owner of the building, and we just hit it off. Speaking really technically though, I have enough money monthly in order to pay the rent for the space, and I have the capability of working out of there, and I needed a space to go. And so it was just a whole bunch of things that felt like they were coming together to make this space available at the exact right time that it needed to be available. As far as like finding furniture and displays, I thrift everything. I found everything off of Facebook Marketplace. So it all just sort of came together from thrifting, and so I could be really budget conscious. And with having to pay rent every month, it's now kind of like a kick in the butt for me to actually start doing the things that I've been wanting to do. So yes, it is a little bit of a leap of faith and a little bit of a leap before I'm ready. And I honestly think that even though everything just kind of came together at the right time, I was super panicked about it because I've been so overwhelmed with all of the moving and getting settled in and having these new jobs and figuring out just what life looks like in general. But then having this new space come along and sort of add to the stress of that. But it was just such perfect timing and just felt so like it needed to happen now. And I've always been a person of do it scared. I would never do anything if I didn't do it scared, because anything that I am doing was something that at one point I was afraid to do, but now I've just done it for so long that it's become what I do. It's become a part of me. And so if I can encourage you to do anything, do everything before you're ready to do it. Not like in a stupid way. I still knew that I could financially handle it, but this was definitely a leap of faith and a jump into something that I don't know if I like mentally was ready for, but I absolutely am, and I'm so thankful that I did when I did. As far as starting a YouTube channel, I had several questions that were basically, how did you get into YouTube? How did you start your channel? And my answer to that is basically I just started making videos. I feel like YouTube is such an accessible place and such a great place to start with content creation, because it really is just you make a video, you edit it, you upload it, and it's out in the world. And so it seems so simple, and I know that there's so much more to it. I think everybody has something to say, and I had something to say, and so I just started making videos and sharing what I loved, and people just came alongside me, and I'm so thankful for that. So for the last little section of questions, we had some random, fun, kind of one-off life questions that I thought would just be fun to answer. So the first question is, what is your favorite ice cream flavor? And your girl has IBS, so I have some major tummy troubles, and dairy is my biggest trigger, so I am dairy-free, but I do love me some ice cream. So my favorite ice cream flavor is typically mint chocolate chip, but the dairy-free Publix mint chocolate chip brand, so good. But my all-time favorite that I haven't had in years because it's dairy is from Brewster's. It's called Pumpkin Patch. It's a fall flavor, and so now it's out. And I remember in college just going to get a pint, eating the whole thing, and then just like having some issues later, but it was worth it because that pumpkin patch ice cream is so good. So I'll probably try and figure out a way to make it, but yeah, that's my ice cream story. Another question was, what is my favorite thing about myself? And I think it's just joy. I have so much joy in so many things, and I feel like I can always find the joy in so many things. And I just love that positivity is what has a hold on my life. I love this question. If I could wear one piece or one outfit for the rest of my life, what would it be? immediately I thought jumpsuits, because jumpsuits are just like my everyday thing. I think they can be dressed up or dressed down. I think they can just be so cute and kind of either be utility, or you can make them really feminine, and I just love them. Also love this question. If I could wear only one color for a year, what would I pick? I think we all know that I would pick orange, and that's all I need to say about that. Someone also asked, what do I do when I don't feel inspired? And I think that whenever I don't feel inspired is typically when I hit a wall. Like, I am typically pretty creative. My brain is always thinking of ideas and new things to do. And so if I'm not feeling like, ooh, this is fun, let's get inspired and do something, I know that I need a break. Doing absolutely nothing, not rushing at all, and either like just going on a walk, getting outdoors, kind of reconnecting, but also just spending time with people with no agenda. I'm realizing recently that a lot of my hobbies have now become my job. So like thrifting used to be a hobby for me. Now it's my job. Creating videos or taking pictures or whatever used to be a hobby. And so I'm kind of relearning some hobbies. So watercolor's become a big one. Reading has become a big one. And then I love baking also. Baking is a huge re-energizing thing for me. For our final question today, maybe on a deeper level, on a more personal level, or even just hopefully encouraging, the question is, what would you tell your younger self? And I always love this question. It always makes me think and just kind of gets me introspective to just see how I've grown. And so I'm 27, still young, still have a lot of life to live, but have definitely lived a lot of life before this too. And so I would say that personally, I struggled a lot with identity and knowing who I was and who I wanted to be. And I think I would just tell my younger self that there's never really a point where you're like, I have arrived. There are definitely points where I love who I am. I love who I have become and know that I am still becoming, but there's never a point where I'm like, I am done changing, I'm done growing, this is it. So I just would love to say, like, take it easy. There's no pressure on you to become anything. Just become, just live. Learn to be a part of the life that you are living and not try so hard to make a life that might not even be yours. So that's probably a lot of thoughts that I just like spit out there at the end. But thank you so much for asking questions and for just hanging out with me today and listening to my answers. Hopefully I answered your questions well. I have a question for you because I'd love to get to know you more. So let me know in the comments below, what is inspiring you these days? I would love to hear that. So I will see you next week. You are well loved. Bye.